Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Wednesday, August 20th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 607 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we have another installment of our 2025 New York Jets player preview series. You know the drill. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on the podcast throughout training camp and the preseason, we take a look at two New York Jets, one on the offensive side of the football and the other on the defensive side of the football. And today, as we always do, we'll start on offense, taking a look at Breece Hall, and then later on, we'll take a look on the defensive side of the football at Quincy Williams. But we begin on offense as always, and that is Breece Hall is our first player today here on the podcast, entering year 4 at 24 years old, 5'11", 217 pounds, 2022 second round pick, 36th overall, of course, by the New York Jets out of Iowa State. Breece Hall enters the final year of his 4-year rookie contract, not a first-round pick, so doesn't have the 5th-year option. So potentially here, the last year that Breece Hall will be a New York Jet, and a lot of that depends on what takes place this year on the field for Breece Hall, and the type of player he is this season will ultimately depend on his future with the Jets, and ultimately just his future beyond the Jets as well, if they do decide to move on, if he's not back. And that's just the crazy part of where we've gotten with Breece Hall. And before I get into what to project this season and what he can do this season and why I'm still very high on him, it's crazy where we've gotten with Breece Hall over these 3 years as we enter year number 4, right? This was a guy taken in the second round in 2022, that historic 2022 draft class for the New York Jets. Breece Hall exploded onto the scene in his first season. Before the torn ACL, 80 carries, 463 yards, was averaging upwards just around 6 yards per carry at 5.8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, was one of the best. Forget young running backs. He was playing like one of the best running backs in the NFL and on his way to winning Rookie of the Year. He then, of course, went down with the torn ACL. Big blow to the Jets that season. Garrett Wilson went on to win Rookie of the Year, and Breece Hall followed up 2023, coming off the torn ACL in a season that was supposed to feature Aaron Rodgers. He goes down week 1 with the Achilles, but even with all that, and even with the Jets offense being pathetic and zero quarterback play and an awful offensive coordinator in Nathaniel Hackett, where he didn't know Breece Hall was a passing threat until halfway through the 2023 season, even with all of that, Breece Hall went out there and had a big year in 2023. And you went into last season with this New York Jets team, and not just Breece Hall, but many other players, specifically on this offense, you expected to see a monster year 3 breakout from Breece Hall and a monster season for the Jets offense, and Breece would be one of the focal points, and that couldn't be further from what actually happened. Breece goes out there last year and in many areas has the worst year of his career. So you went from year 1, year 2, where you saw a lot of good things, expecting a massive year in year 3, and he took a huge step back, and now you're here in year 4, and the fan perspective on Breece the outside national perspective on Breece has completely changed to the point where you've had some people wonder if the Jets should trade him, if they will trade him, if it's something they do at the deadline. Breece has popped up now in trade rumors, trade talks, really this entire offseason. And I've said this many times, I am not on board at all with the possibility of trading Breece Hall. And the Jets aren't going to trade Breece Hall before this season. That's clear. That's obvious. Is it something that maybe gets done at the deadline? That's a different story, but that's a story for November when that time comes around, depending on how Breece is playing and where the Jets are in the season record-wise at that point. But I still have high expectations for Breece Hall this year. And I'm one of, it feels like, the minority now of people that still believe in Breece Hall to have a big season this year for this New York Jets team and bounce back this season for this New York Jets team. Now, when you look at last year's numbers, they were ugly in many areas. There's no way to deny that. 16 games played, 209 carries, 876 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns. Those were the rushing numbers. You look at the receiving totals last year, 16 games played, 57 receptions on 76 targets for 483 receiving yards, 8.5 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns. You look at the total numbers, 266 total touches, 1,359 total yards, 5.1 yards per attempt, and 8 total touchdowns. Now, those were the 2024 numbers. A massive drop-off from what we saw in 2023, where he played all 17 games, had 223 carries, had 76 receptions on 95 targets. He was first in the NFL among running backs in receptions, and as a whole, had 299 total touches. He led all running backs with receiving yards with 591 in 2023. On top of the 994 rushing yards, he was second in the NFL in total yards in 2023 with 1,585. And oh yeah, by the way, he added on 9 touchdowns to that total as well. So that's the discrepancy between 2024 and 2023 with Breece Hall. And when you just look as well at how he graded last year compared to 2023, it was a massive, massive difference. I mean, he had the best receiving grade among running backs in the NFL in 2023. He was first with an 88.9 receiving grade last year. That 88.9 Pro Football Focus receiving grade, and I get it, PFF grades aren't the end-all be-all, but in this scenario, it does tell you a lot. That dropped to 47.5, which ranked 42nd out of 47 running backs. All running backs, not just qualified, all running backs in the NFL last year, which is just crazy to see that drop off, and certainly a little bit alarming. You look at some other 2024 numbers. All right, 62 overall grade, 47.5 receiving grade, like I mentioned, 68.7 rushing grade. All of those are career lows. He had 0.0 rush yards over expected, which was 21st out of 31 qualified running backs with 150-plus rushes. His 0.176 missed tackles forced per carry was also a career low last year. And when you break down the missed tackles, it really is alarming. His 46 missed tackles on the ground in 2023 were 12th. He followed it up in 2024 with 10 less at 36 missed tackles forced, which dropped him to 27th. From a receiving perspective, he forced 36 missed tackles as a receiver in 2023, which was first. That was the most among any running back in the NFL. He followed that up in 2024 by ranking 17th with 19 less missed tackles forced as a receiver with 17 in 2024. His 3 yards on average after contact was a career low. And he also had 6 fumbles last year, which was the second most in the NFL. And that was the most he's ever had in his single season. In his first 2 years combined, which was 24 games, he had just 3 fumbles. And a lot of the other stuff with Breece last year that you saw was just watching him. The vision wasn't quite there. There was a lot of running lanes open that Breece just didn't take. You also just didn't see the same burst out of Breece Hall last season, and come to find out, he was dealing with a knee injury last year. Kind of something that you didn't really know. It was a lot more severe than I think all of us expected during last season while the year was going on, and I'm not making excuses for him, but it clearly hindered him. One thing that Breece did so well in 2023 and before he tore his ACL in 2022, his rookie season, is just his ability to make it look so easy. When he hit the open field, some of his big runs last season or 2 years ago rather, and his rookie year, it didn't even look like he was trying. It looked so easy. It looked so smooth. His ability to get to the open field, make guys miss, hit another level, and just run away from the defense and pick up massive, massive chunk plays was elite. It was so much fun to watch. You didn't see that last year. Everything looked so much tougher for Breece. Everything was much more of a grind, you could tell, for Breece. The same shiftiness in the open field to make guys miss. The vision, the burst when he hit the second level to get to another gear. It just wasn't the same. It wasn't. But I'm still, in my opinion, I don't know how you can sit here and just think that he can't get back to what he was in 2023. And to be honest, I think a lot of Breece's issues last year, while the fumbles are on him, and certainly some of the runs where his vision was clearly lacking, because there are runs that were ugly from Breece Hall where there were holes open and he just didn't see him and didn't hit him hard enough. While that's a lot of it's on him, they didn't use him properly last year either. And this Jets run game last year was a complete disaster on so many levels. Breece Hall last year did not have a single game of 20 or more carries. He didn't. And that's terrible. That's unacceptable. And you actually look at the games where Breece Hall had 16 to 18 carries, he had success in some of those games. Against Buffalo, he had 18 carries for 113 yards. Against New England, 16 for 80. Both of those games averaging over 5 yards a carry. Against Arizona, 10 for 52. I know that's low amount, but you fast forward a week later, 16 for 78 against Indy, 4.9. 12 for 60 against Seattle. The point I'm trying to make, there was some games where he was only getting 9 to 10 carries. But the games where he was getting 16 to 18 carries, he was producing. The yards per carry was there. Now, the yards per carry this season as a whole last year was a major drop-off, the career low. But the point I'm trying to make, he was not used properly last year. The Jets as a team ranked 32nd in attempts, dead last in the NFL, and 31st in rush yards and yards per game. The Lions, when you look at Tanner Engstrand and what he's trying to implement here, were 3rd in attempts and 6th in yards and yards per game. I look at Breece Hall this season as a massive weapon for this team, not just out of the backfield, but also as a receiver. You look at the way things are going to be structured for this Jets offense from a receiving game perspective, you look at Breece Hall and expect that he should be this team's second leading receiver behind Garrett Wilson. That's the expectation. If everything goes as planned and he's healthy and he's out there. And I expect that should be the case because you look at Engstrand and his background and how he's going to utilize the run. Last year, so many times you had Rodgers checking out of run plays. The run plays and the run concepts last year were so vanilla. Yeah, there's things Breece has to do better, but a lot of the issues with Breece Hall and this Jets was more so on this Jets offense last year and the situation he was in. This is going to be a run-first team. Breece is going to have opportunities. This is a coaching staff that finally is recognizing he's a threat as a pass catcher. Finally, the incompetence that the New York Jets have had in Breece Hall's first 2 years, they didn't realize that. I said in the open, Nathaniel Hackett openly came out and said he didn't know Breece was much of a receiving threat until they played the Giants. That was halfway through the 2023 season. That's a complete joke. And last year, at times, they completely eliminated him from the receiving game and completely eliminated the run game from the game plan in general last year down the stretch where you had Aaron Rodgers throwing 40 to 50 passes for a 5-win Jets team. That was a lot of the big issues, the situation he was in. You put Breece in a situation where he's going to be one of the focal points in this offense. By the way, are we just going to ignore the potential of him benefiting from having Justin Fields next to him? A quarterback with the threat of taking off. Fields in his career over 2,500 yards on the ground. The RPO game. That's going to keep defenses guessing. That's going to benefit Breece Hall because defenses have to take into account Fields and his wheels and his legs, and that's going to open up opportunities where the defense bites and Breece takes advantage of those opportunities. And same thing vice versa with Justin Fields having a run game like this. You have a coaching staff that wants to use him in the receiving game, understands that they need to use him in the receiving game. You have an offense that's going to be a run-first identity. Breece Hall hasn't been in an offense like that in his first 3 seasons. I expect a bounce-back year out of Breece Hall. I'm sorry, but I can't just all of a sudden sit here with Breece Hall and say that the 1,500 yards that he put up in 2023, that was second in the NFL, in a terrible situation, by the way, coming off a torn ACL, was just a 1-year type of thing. No way. Last year, everything on the Jets offense was pretty much broken. I expect a bounce back year out of Breece Hall. I think his ceiling is still incredibly high. I still have a lot of belief in him. And who knows? I might be sitting here middle of the year and wrong, and I'll admit I'm wrong, but I still have high expectations for an offense he's going to be a focal point in. So that's the Breece Hall player preview. That one I've been looking forward to doing now for a little while because I think it's just crazy where we've gotten with Breece Hall. I still personally believe. All right, moving on now to Quincy Williams. Entering year 7 at 28 years old, although he will be 29 on August 28th. So when the New York Jets line up to face off against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1, Quincy Williams will be 29 years old. His age 29 season in year number 7. 5'11", 230 pounds, third-round pick, 98th overall, selected by the Jacksonville Jaguars out of Murray State. Of course, spent the first 2 seasons of his career with the Jaguars, was then released. Jets picked him up off of waivers. And as a lot of people like to say, the rest is history. Quincy Williams, after being picked up off of waivers, now enters his 5th season with the Jets. And the 4 years so far with Quincy Williams has been excellent. He's been amazing. He's been everything you could ask for out of a waiver claim diamond in the rough. He really is the definition of that, as him and Quinnen, the brothers, have been some of the two anchors of this defense for the New York Jets over the last couple of seasons. And you look at Quincy Williams in his career so far with the Jets, these last 4 years, inserted himself as not just one of the better players on the Jets defense and the Jets team as a whole, but also one of the better linebackers in the NFL. This is a guy who's tallied 471 tackles in 65 games with the Jets, 61 games started, 20 passes defended, 50 tackles for loss, 16 quarterback hits. Just some of the numbers during his time here with the Jets since joining the team in 2021. His sideline-to-sideline speed, the energy he brings, his ability to just be that thumper, does so many things well. And him and Jamien Sherwood have quickly implemented himself. And you look at what they can do this year as one of the better linebacker duos in the NFL. And Quincy Williams does enter the final year of his contract. Jets also paid Jamien Sherwood earlier this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see Quincy Williams in his future here with the Jets, if they extend him, if he is here beyond just this season. But before we get to all that and all those conversations and if that'll happen or not, I'm looking forward to just enjoying another season of watching Quincy Williams play football because the first 4 seasons have been a ton of fun. And I expect the same here in year number 5. In some areas, like I mentioned with Jamie Sherwood on Monday's player preview, Quincy Williams has a chance this year to break out to another level when you look at this defense, the defensive scheme, and how Quincy, some of his success throughout his career, should be able to be used more this season with the Jets under Steve Wilks, Aaron Glenn, and what this defense is going to bring to the table. Before we get up to all that, though, when you just look at last year's numbers, just some of the baseline stuff. 17 games played, 1,136 snaps. That actually ranks second among linebackers in the NFL last year, so a workhorse from that perspective. 116 total tackles, 74 solo tackles, 60 run stops, 2 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. 3 of those, he was able, 3 fumble recoveries. So 7 total turnovers forced there total. The 4 forced fumbles were second in the NFL among linebackers. He also had 4 passes defended, 14 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and 15 pressures, which ranked inside the top 13. He was top 25 in the NFL in solo tackles and top 30 in total tackles, and he was second on the team in both of those categories as well. So you look at the rankings, you look at the numbers, just some of the basic stuff. One of the elite linebackers, one of the elite players there at the position. You look at some of the Pro Football Focus numbers and where he stands there last season. 68 overall grade, 74.3 run defense grade, a 61.0 coverage grade. Little bit of a drop off from 2023 where his coverage grade was actually second among linebackers at 88.7. Drop off there going into this season. But him and Jamie Sherwood, the Jets were just one of 4 teams in the NFL last year to have a 68 or higher overall grade for both those linebackers. Both of their starting linebackers. Sherwood above 68, Quincy as well. So that is a note when you just look at the 2 of them as a whole and what they can do this season together and what they were able to do last year. Now, like I said, though, Quincy's ability to get into the backfield and just be a tackle for loss machine has been on full display. I'll read you a couple other numbers here. He's had 41 tackles for loss since 2022. He's also had 140 run stops since 2023, which over that time, over the last 2 years, 24 games played, those 140 run stops are first among linebackers by an extremely wide margin. Not really anybody else that comes close. His ability to get into the backfield, clog running lanes, his ability to rack up tackles for loss, the sideline to sideline speed, just that presence of that downhill speed is clear as day, not just looking at the numbers, but obviously just watching him on the field. And out of those 140 run stops, like I said, 60 of those came this year, which ranked third. 2023, he had 80, which was first in the NFL. So he's been top 3 the last 2 years in run stops, has been one of the better high tackling machines, tackle for loss machines, and run stopping linebackers in the NFL over the last couple years here for this New York Jets team. And that's what I think is really nice and really positive about Quincy Williams is his way, the ability that he's had to develop since joining the Jets in 2021. And one of Quincy Williams' is issues, and there is still moments now just because of the way he plays and his aggressiveness where he does miss tackles at times. Everybody misses tackles, but there are times where that happens with Quincy Williams, and that's just the aggressiveness and the speed and the downhill speed that he brings where guys will escape free. He will miss tackles, but for the most part, one of the big things with Quincy Williams when he joined the Jets was the first year, there was a lot of missed tackles. There was a lot of bad routes taken on tackles, and it hurt him at times. But since then, he's gotten better with it each and every year, 2022, 2023, 2024, to the point now where he is one of the better run-stopping linebackers in the NFL. He's one of the highest tackle for loss machines at the linebacker position in the NFL. And that's also what makes him and Jamie Sherwood such a dynamic duo, is Quincy has the ability to be that run stopper, clog the running lanes, sideline to sideline, downhill speed, while Sherwood is more of your, and Quincy can play well in coverage, but did see a bit of a drop off in the coverage game last year. But Sherwood is more of that coverage linebacker where he can go stride for stride with wide receivers, tight ends. He's proven it. And his ability to break up passes and force incompletions at a very high rate among linebackers in the NFL. And we spoke on that in his player preview. But just when you talk about the two of them and the way they complement each other and how they're so good next to each other, that's a big reason for it. They both do things really, really well that complement each other really well in those different aspects, your tackling, your run stopping, and also your coverage. Another thing with Quincy Williams that's been so positive and something that the Jets defensively need to do more of this year and haven't done enough of, and that's forced turnovers. Quincy Williams has been involved in 10 total turnovers since 2023, 6 forced fumbles and 4 fumble recoveries. His ability, he has a knack for punching the ball out, laying some massive hits. I mean, we all remember the massive hit last year against Kyler Murray. Laying some massive hits to jar the ball loose, punch the ball out, and his ability to recover fumbles as well has been present. This is a Jets team that has not done a good job of, frankly, getting interceptions, forcing fumbles, or recovering fumbles over the last couple years. Even when this defense was at its peak in 2023 and 2022, even when it was that good, 2023 specifically, the best year that this defense has had recently, this group of players, they still could not force turnovers. That was still the big knock. Last year remained a big issue. Quincy Williams, though, is one of the only players on this team that has been able to not only force turnovers, force fumbles, put the ball on the ground, but also recover fumbles and, change games that way. Jets haven't been able to do that. I mean, the Jets defense recovering fumbles it's been a hard watch sometimes. When the ball's on the ground, they're not able to jump on it. Quincy has been able to do that. And you just look at his Jets career. I just gave you the last 2 years, but you look at his Jets career as a whole. He has forced 9 fumbles and has recovered 4 fumbles in his Jet career. So that's a total of 13 turnovers that he's been involved in through his 4 seasons with the Jets, which I don't have the number right in front of me, but that feels like it's probably the most on the team. One of the only players that has been able to force turnovers at a high rate. And you hope that continues. And you hope other players on this Jets defense can do more of that. But that's been something that's been a big positive of Quincy Williams' game as well, just as a well-rounded linebacker. Now, I talked about this in the Jamie Sherwood player preview, and I want to bring it up now. The rate that the Jets are going to blitz at this year, right? The Lions last season under Aaron Glenn blitzed 38% of the time, or 38.4% of the time. That was third in the NFL. Steve Wilks, if you subtract his 1 year in San Francisco where they did play more zone, but that is more of a San Francisco structure thing. They've always played zone there. If you subtract that and you look at Steve Wilks in his other stops, he averages a 39.9 blitz rate with his defenses, which is on average a ranking in the NFL that would be third over his years. And specifically when you look at the linebackers, Jack Campbell last year for the Lions was 6th in the NFL among linebackers in pass rush snaps with 118. Quincy Williams and Jay Sherwood combined had 119. The Lions last year rushed their linebackers the most in the NFL, 356 times. The Jets only rushed their linebackers 139 times. That's a 217 snap difference. And when you look at a per game sample size, it's even more stark. The Lions per game in 2024 averaged 20.9 pass rush snaps per game with their linebackers. The Jets only had 8.2. So you should expect to see about 13 more pass rushing snaps, blitzing opportunities for Quincy Williams and Jamie Sherwood this year. And why that is such a big deal and why that's such a big positive is, number one, that's going to be one of the Jets' identities here on defense. But number two, Quincy Williams, similar to Jamie Sherwood, has had success rushing the passer when he's been called upon to do it. In 237 career pass rush snaps, he has had 48 pressures, which is a 20.3% pressure rate, 10 sacks, and a 4.2% sack rate. And like I did with Sherwood, I'm going to give you the rankings here. His 48 pressures would have been 6th in the NFL last year. And his 20.3% pressure rate would be above the 2024 average of 17.5% set by linebackers last season. His 10 sacks would have ranked 3rd in the NFL last year among linebackers, and his 4.2% sack rate would also be above average of last year's sack rate for linebackers, which was 3.1%. So Quincy Williams, similar to Jamie Sherwood, his ability to rush the passer has been at a well above average clip and has had a ton of success doing it. And the Jets are going to do more of that this year. And as I said earlier, when I opened up this player preview for Quincy Williams, what he's been able to do his first 4 years here has been great. But you look at Quincy Williams this year, and you look at him being able to hit another level. And that next level is getting home to the quarterback. And the big hits he can deliver to quarterbacks in the backfield is going to be a massive, massive plus for this Jets defense. And a massive plus just pressure-wise for this Jets defense is blitzing and sending the house and not being afraid to be aggressive. And Quincy having that ability to get home is huge. Him and Sherwood. And I want to combine the two here before we close things out. Quincy and Jamie and Sherwood, if you combined their pressures and what they've been able to do from a pass rushing perspective, they would have had 51 pressures combined, which would be second among linebacker pairings in 2024. Only Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu exceeded 50 pressures. Frankie Louvu, former Jet, last season 59. That would be the only team that was better. If you also compare it, they would have had 12 sacks combined, which would be second in the NFL. Or first, among all linebackers pairings. So they would be second among linebacker pairings in 2024 with those pressures, and first among linebacker pairings in 2024 with sacks. So arguably, if Quincy Williams and Jamie Sherwood with a higher clip of blitzing and pass rushing opportunities, you could be looking at one of the better duos from a pass rushing perspective at the linebacker position. Quincy Williams being a big piece in that. And that's a massive, massive plus for this defense, and a massive plus for Quincy Williams, adding another tool to his toolbox, which is huge for this team. So that's another player preview. Appreciate the support as always. This was a fun one. We've got a player in Breece Hall who has been written off by many. I still believe in. And in a player in Quincy Williams who should have a massive year, and I think everybody expects that. But two guys that are going into the last year of their contracts. And I hope that these are not the last player previews we're doing of either of these players. I have a feeling it's very possible the last player preview of Breece Hall, unless they franchise tag and he's back. However, that all plays out. That's 2026 offseason stuff. Quincy Williams, I also hope he's back. But like I said, I'm just excited to watching Quincy Williams again this year play linebacker because it's a ton of fun. And I'm also hoping and excited to see Breece Hall have a bounce back year because I believe he does so. So what are your thoughts on Breece Hall and Quincy Williams entering the 2025 season? Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Appreciate your support as always. And until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.